some hope that I'm gonna look better or feel better, in 74 days. and
Right.
it's and it's that, like you say, it's that reality of just like, yo, this I don't have to do this, so why am I doing this?
When adversity came, I could have fell apart, but I chose instead to follow my heart. When adversity comes, I will never run, I will adjust, adapt, and overcome. Vision. Woo! What's going on, everybody? Welcome to your one-stop shop for everything empowerment. I am your host, Tariq Williams, Vision of Hope. But not only I am Vision of Hope, but we are Vision of Hope. And if you're into empowerment, well, you're at the right place. And not only that, the special guest we have today is all about empowerment. And so, host of the First Sip podcast and here for all of your real estate needs, Mr. Dekimbe Smith.
Thank you for having me back, man. And I appreciate the plug because we always gotta plug what we do because we got bills to pay. So listen.
We do have bills to pay. We do have bills to pay.
Yep. So like Tariq said, if you guys need some help in the Pennsylvania area, let me know. But we're not here to talk about that, Tariq. We are here.
But we are here to talk about empowerment. But when I think about you, Dekimbe, the First Sip podcast, your growth, I think about the work ethic, okay? And when I was on your podcast recently, about, I don't know, 1,000,007 times, we talked about the challenge of 75 hard. And I want to kind of talk in this podcast today a little bit about work ethic. I want to talk about consistency, sustainability, and just what that means to level up in your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that the 75 Hard Challenge speaks on. And we'll define what the 75 Hard Challenge is in just a moment. But can you tell us, language is important here. You know that, you've been here.
Very true.
What is one word that was in your mind, in your head, when you were thinking about starting your journey on 75 Hard?
Okay, so I guess if I had to choose one word, right?
Just one. You only get one.
Just one word to define, like when I sat there and really made the commitment to do this and said, okay, there's no turning back. If you fail, not only are you going to fail yourself, but you're going to, you're going to get clowned by the guys. Like you're going to feel bad day after day. And I was like, you know what? I really just have to execute. And that's what it came down to. And it's funny because if I look to my right, actually, like I was talking about before this, I'm really big on writing things down.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually wrote it down and it's on a paper right next to me, right? Like I wrote out the word, wrote out the definition. And I know some people do this, but some people might also find it crazy. But I wrote it out right. And you have the word execute, which is carry out or to put into effect. Very simple, very straightforward. And when I was sitting there thinking about, okay, and I think we kind of talked about this a little bit on our podcast on First Sip, is I was sitting there and realizing like, okay, with all these things that have been holding me back out of a normal routine, all these things that have been having me on this roller coaster of life, how am I going to go ahead and jump into this serious commitment, right? Where now you're going to work out twice a day, you're going to stick to a diet, you're going to read, and then do these different things. I was just like, you know what? You just have to execute. You don't even have to think about what you need to do. You just have to sit there and follow the plan that's laid out and just do it.
So you started getting into it. And so let's define, we'll put somewhere on the screen exactly all the entire syllabus for 75 Hard. But can you tell us all the things, the rubric for 75 Hard?
Yeah, so basically with 75 Hard, first thing, right, you hear 75, it lasts for 75 days. So over those 75 days, you are committing to, one, drinking a gallon of water a day. You're going to do 2 workouts a day. You are also going to read 10 pages, right, from any book every single day. You are also going to follow a diet. You are not going to drink any alcohol for the 75 days, right? And with the 2 workouts, one of them has to be outdoors. And one of the things that I almost forgot it even saying this, but one of the things that I almost always forgot to do was take that selfie picture at the end of the day, right? You have to take a picture of your progress so you can see how you're going each and every single day. So thankfully, there's a tracker that you can download that goes with this whole program, but we also have the accountability group that we put together. So that also helped, just kind of remembering those little things throughout the day. So, you make sure you take your progress picture, you're drinking your gallon, you're checking in with your workouts throughout the day. But it's a serious, serious endeavor. Anybody who has been through it will tell you that you will go through some days and be like, why am I doing this? But then you get through a certain hump and it's just like, okay, it's starting to make sense.
Mm. Okay, so you talk about getting over the hump and it's starting to make sense. Okay. But now let's intertwine your professional career with this a little bit because you have the podcast and you also have your real estate business. Now, did it affect your business? And because 75 hard, that's a commitment to make sure you're on it with the water, the 2 workouts a day, the time management for everything you had to do. So, what did that look like when it came to your professional life?
Yeah, honestly, business got a lot better. Personal life got a lot better, which I don't know if it might shock people or not because
I'm
you
shocked
hear
that
what.
uh, that doesn't make sense in that you
Mhm,
had more expectations of yourself throughout the day. So how did that get
mhm.
better?
Because for me, I mean, I'm a person who likes structure, right? I like structure. I enjoy routines because I feel like when you have that, then you really have the ability to see like where you have the free time and the gaps, right? Where you have the opportunity to go and say like, okay, well, I know I'm doing this, and this in this certain time period, but other than that, the rest of my time is mine to do with it what I want, right? So when I'm seeing all this and saying, okay, well, I got to figure out how to do an hour and a half worth of workouts today. Where can I split that out? Boom, look at the calendar, plan that out, done. Got to drink a gallon of water. Okay, cool. I got my bottle here, right? Got to fill this up 4 times throughout the day. That's a gallon. Done. It became so easy and so systematic that it's just like, yo, how do you not do it? Right? Other than like the
Mhm.
emotions of, oh, I don't feel good, I'm tired. There's no thinking, right? So the rest of your business, the rest of your personal life, you're just able to go through so freely because everything else you're doing like in that challenge is already making you better. So you're not trying to find that, I guess, when it comes to your personal life or your business. It's almost happening just because of the fact that you're doing this challenge and pushing yourself in that other area that the
Mm.
rest of your life just starts elevating, right? So it's kind of weird to explain, but it really just kind of everything just started kind of going up, and the momentum just kept building as this challenge started, right? Like I just started looking around, I'm like, wow, I'm starting to feel better as I go through different business interactions. I'm starting to feel just more energized on my day to day while I'm going through work, right? Or hanging out with my friends. I deal with anxiety and you feel just less stress and less anxiety throughout the day because it's just like, yo, you're really pushing yourself and you're challenging yourself in different areas where you thought you would have been shook before. And now look at
Mhm.
you just accomplishing, really just like getting win after win after win, small wins day after day. And that helps so much. And I don't think a lot of people really realize how much it really helps to get those simple wins on a repeated basis.
So I am as a coach, as someone who believes in coaching others to be the best version of themselves, get through plateaus and different hurdles and everything like that. I think what you're saying is great. However, I have a little bit of a problem with it. A little
I'm
bit of a
waiting for
problem.
it. Yep.
Right? I don't know because you're giving us all the good, right?
Hmm.
But let's
Oh, we can talk about the bad. Trust me.
let's talk
Yep.
about day one, day two, three, four, and
Hmm.
five when you were looking at that word that you wrote down, execute,
Yep.
and you were like, "Can I really execute this?"
I'm happy you asked. I'm happy you asked because that's the stuff that people don't sometimes want to talk about, right? A lot of people just want to hear the hoorah, right? Like, oh, you get up, you put on that motivational video. I love ET, right? So
Hmm.
you listen to some of his motivational stuff, and when he tells you to get that dog in you, when he
Yeah,
tells you that he's up at 3 a.m., right, and
when
he's already up and moving, and you're
when
sitting there,
Vision of Hope is telling you that we don't do incomplete here.
yeah, it's just like, come on now, right? I listen to one of your videos, I'm just like, okay, let's get up. What is it? But then you realize, oh snap, I still have to do my outdoor workout and it's 9:30 at night and it's 30 degrees outside and I could probably, I think I have the video on my phone, so I could probably pull this up and do a little edit there. But those nights where you're walking and it's 9:30 and it's raining, right? It's snowing and it's just like, this is so stupid, bro. I remember one night being outside and I can't, like, it was downpouring. I mean a torrential downpour.
Yeah, yeah.
If I don't know if y'all believe, whoever, if the listeners, whatever y'all believe in, he was laughing at me that day, okay? Because he was saying, "Oh, you think you got this? Okay, watch. We're gonna make this 10 times harder, right?"
Yeah, yeah.
The rain that came down from the sky that night was so different. My my shoes were soaking wet, my socks were soaking wet, everything. And but it was funny because at a certain point, even on that walk, you start laughing at yourself, right? Just how you're laughing right now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you tell yourself, like, it can't get much worse than this.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's almost like if anybody's ever done like a cold shower, like, or an ice plunge,
Right.
after the first like 30 seconds of like, you realize, yo, it can't get much worse than this. So let me find something to laugh about here. And that's what I told myself, right? Like, in those darkest points, just like, you really just have to laugh at yourself sometimes, because you really are pushing yourself to a really dark place that a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people will not want to go to and will never experience. And here
Mm.
you are, actively inviting this into your life and saying, yeah, let's do this because of some hope that I'm gonna look better or feel better, in 74 days. and
Right.
it's and it's that, like you say, it's that reality of just like, yo, this, I don't have to do this, so why am I doing this?
I'm big on language, Dekimbe, as you
Mm-hmm.
know. And I have to point out another thing that you mentioned there for a second,
Mm.
because you mentioned going to that quote unquote dark place, right? But I think that we look at some of those difficult and hard moments as that quote unquote that dark place,
Mm.
when what it call it for what it actually is, an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity. And so I think that it's interesting to hear your journey, because I remember like you all talking about it and like the work you were putting in. But
Mm-hmm.
what we're talking about is opportunity, is it not? You've never experienced anything like that particularly before.
Yeah. And it's, I don't know if you read, what is it, Never Finished by David Goggins, right? And
Mm,
it's very funny that you talk about turning that idea of being in the dark place into an opportunity, right? Because he always talks about putting yourself into some challenge, right? And like really pushing yourself and just going deeper and deeper and deeper. And he
mhm,
talks about like being in a dark place so long that it turned into the light, right? It's just like when you're in that tunnel so long and it seems so dark, you eventually realize at the end of that tunnel is the light, right? And that is the
mm,
opportunity that's coming. But you won't know that if you stop, right? Like, and say like, okay, well, I'm not going to go through this tunnel because it's like, I don't know what's on the other end, or blah 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 blah. But that, like you said, that in and of itself is the opportunity to become better and see what's on the other side and be like, yo, i can I can just do more, right? Like, there's something out there that I should be chasing after, and if I don't kind of just, for lack of a better word, just nut up and just go through it, I'll never see what's over there, right? So yeah, like, and I think that's another thing that just scares people with it, right?
mhm.
And it's funny, you talk about words, right? Scared, dark places. It kind of goes back to these fears, but I think it all goes hand in hand. Why would somebody want to sit there and be like, oh yeah, my life's going so good today, let me just go ahead and, you know make my muscles hurt tomorrow, right? Like, let me go do some crazy leg workout that's going to make me feel crippled, right? You
Mhm.
work out hard, you know how it is.
Right.
The idea seems great, right? You start off and then the next morning you wake up, it's just like, oh, okay, yep. It's like, we definitely hit that muscle, yep, we did that.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, for sure, for
Right, like you
sure.
said, that's the opportunity to grow and get better.
Now, when we start talking a little bit more then about when you started getting the rhythm, okay?
Mm,
And we're talking now about that consistency turning into sustainability. And I'm going to ask this question twice in two different parts of your journey. Now, at what point in the 75 days would you say, rough estimate, that you felt like you started Oh, okay. We're executing. We got it. We've hit the rhythm.
Mm, let's see, because that's kind of hard. Um,
Okay. And who knows? Maybe
yeah.
it didn't happen. Maybe it was the push for the execution.
Well, because like there was a couple times throughout 75 hard, right, where there was like other events. Like I had to fly to South America for about a week. Yeah, for a week, when like right in the middle of it, right? So day I think like 31 down there, going to South America, and it's like you have to stick to the exact same routine. So at that point I would say, yeah, maybe around like the second, third week of the program, you start really getting into the normal routine. Like your eating is pretty consistent, like exactly, what's making you feel good, like what workouts are doing well. But then, like I said, those other things pop up, and it's just like, oh, well, now you got to make an adjustment. Right. And how are you going to make this adjustment and keep things going? And that honestly was a challenge, right, in and of itself, trying to say, okay, well, I got to be at the airport at this time, and how am I going to do two workouts and still be able to manage this and then stick? It's just that became a lot to think about, right? But then you get there, you're right back onto the normal routine. You're doing your workouts, eating your food. So it, like I said, it was a little hard, like back and forth. But I mean, like after a while, I would say it just I became pretty consistent, like probably like third weekend, and just had to make a few adjustments from there.
So, for those who are frequent listeners on the podcast or see me perform, I
Mhm.
have a few songs that I've written, and one of the song on the hook for when you all joined is "Adjust, Adapt, and Overcome." So let's talk adjust for a moment here. Okay, you talk about making adjustments. What does it mean to make adjustments in 75 hard or in your daily life when you reach a specific obstacle?
Let's see. What does it mean to make adjustments? I guess it just first, you got to be clear on like, okay, like what is the real like issue that you're dealing with,
Mm-hmm.
and is it a real issue that I need to adjust around? Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing that I am also learning too, is that sometimes things that might pop up and you say, oh, I need to adjust and pivot and do this. No, you don't. Right. You don't, just tell yourself you don't have to do that thing. Right. That thing isn't as important as a thing that you already had, that's predetermined, pre-planned, and that it's actually important to you. Right. So that would be, yeah, I mean, like that's just one major thing that I mean, even if you want to stay there for a second, it's just realizing that when certain things pop up, you don't always have to sit there and jump and do it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Stick to what you have to do and come back around to those other things, you know?
I like your definition there because it kind of makes me think, specifically if you actually don't need to make an adjustment.
Hmm.
Um, when we start thinking about our why for a particular task or situation, I think people think it's one question, the answer
Hmm.
why. Like, why do I want to develop my business? Because I like X topic, right?
Hmm.
But then it's deeper than that. Okay? It's deeper than that because it becomes more about, well, why do you like that topic? And you dig deep. I think people often miss the point that you got to ask yourself why,
Hmm.
like you're a 2-year old,
Yep.
at least 5 to 7 times before we get to the root of it.
Hmm. That's the, and that is exactly it, right? Like you just, and it, I do that with other people almost to a point where I know it annoys them, where I'm always just like, well, why? Why do we have to do it that way? Why do we have to do it that way? Kind of a side topic, but today is election day here in Philadelphia, right? So mayoral election, a lot of, elected officials are up, trying to get nail down their seats. And one thing that has always irked me in Philadelphia is the fact that you can't vote for elected officials if you aren't registered Democrat or Republican,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you sit there and it's going through it, and you go to the polling place, right? So of course I went today to vote, at least like on the different like questions that are relevant to the city. So you go there and you have a few different questions that you can actually vote for. But I'm asking the people there, right, who work for the polling place, they're always working the campaigns year after year. I'm like, why don't you guys let people who are registered independent vote for elected officials? And they're just like, oh, well, that's just the way it's always been. And I'm like, well, why? Right? I'm just like, why is why is it like that? Don't you guys, I was like, do you guys have a large turnout? They're like, no, actually today we've had very low, we've had a very low turnout. I'm like, well, do you think it would help if you guys allowed people? I mean, like, in Philadelphia, there's a large independent, population. Do you think it would help
Hmm.
if you allowed them to vote? And they were like, well, maybe. And I'm just like, so why don't you bring it up? And you can tell, right? Like, even, and I'll save you the rest of the story, but it's just like, you can tell as you really start questioning things and start going through the whys, people don't have answers. They don't think things through, right? As simple as the question why, you'll get to that second or third, and people are speechless, right? And I think that's the same thing that we realize with ourselves. It's like sometimes we go to the second or third why. Yeah, why do you keep going to that job that you say you hate for the third year, fourth year, 50, you get in those little plaques, but you keep telling everybody you love to meet up with your friends every Friday night at the bar and tell them, man, I hate this job. I hate Sue. She always, riding my back, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but so why are you staying there? Oh, well, it pays the bills. Why do you need that job to pay your bills?
Mm.
Oh, well, because you can't find another job that pays you 40, 50, $60,000 a year, $70,000 a year. Well, I don't, well, it becomes very, it, the excuses just start to disappear, right? After a while, they really disappear, and you realize, like, wow, I don't have much to stand on here if I'm really questioning myself and trying to see, is this as serious as I'm making it out to be?
That third why that you got
Mm-hmm.
to really made me think. Like, why? 'Cause I need this job to pay my bills, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's going, why do you need this job to pay your bills? Whatever, right? And the answer to that question, in my opinion, there is because even though they don't like their job, it's because, well, that's comfortable, right?
Mm.
Comfortable. The status quo, the stagnance is comfortable. Okay. Now, what do we do, or in terms of moments where you felt too comfortable? Like, I would argue that maybe even the moment of starting 75 hard,
Yep.
I'm too comfortable in my current situation. I need to get to a place where I'm comfortable with the uncomfortable and
Mm-hmm.
move forward. So, what what is it that inspires you? What is it that inspired you to get out of that comfortable and push yourself?
Mm. Here we go. Now we're really drilling down to some questions. Honestly, for me, it was, you sit around and you realize, if you really think about it, right? And I'm a person, any of my friends can tell you, I sit around and I probably think about a lot of scenarios way too much.
Hmm.
But I sit there and I always think about, like, yo, you're not doing what you should be doing.
Mm,
You're not pushing yourself the way you need to be pushing yourself, right? Like, you're trying, right? Like, you're really trying. I'm not taking that away from myself, right? And this is me having the conversation with myself. It's like, you're really trying on a daily basis, but to what extent, right? Like, how are you really giving 100% of your effort, or are you giving 100% of someone else, maybe, right? Like, is this really what you're capable of? And all these different conversations I'm having with myself, I'm just like, yo, and almost because I'm probably comparing myself to, like, past accomplishments I've had in my life, and saying,
uh-huh.
like, okay, you've done this, you've been able to overcome that, you challenge yourself and you did this other thing. Why over the past 6 months, the past year, are you getting to this point, like you said, of comfortability, where you're just, whatever pops up, you're using that first excuse to be like, oh, well, I'm just gonna ride this out because this is, I don't feel good, or I don't feel like doing it, or that might, shake me up in a way that I don't know what the end result's gonna be. So let me just kind of sit back and do that. Right. And that was a lot of the conversation having myself there about just like, yo, why aren't you doing what you need to be doing, especially with the dreams that you see yourself accomplishing in the future, and you're in the future self? How are you possibly going to be that based on what you're doing right now? And that is the thing. I was having this conversation with somebody the other day too. I was just like, yo, when you look at yourself years down the road, what do you see? Right? Like, how does that person look? What are they doing? What are they accomplishing? And then if you're that person, look back on yourself today. What would you say? Right? And then how much longer would you want to continue being this person that you are today, knowing where you want to be 5 years down the road? And that's where I was just like, yo, 75, but we got to do this. I was like, uh, I was like, yeah, well, yeah, at least got to get back in the gym, start eating right, right, do something because this is not who we want to be.
You know, a lot of people might have missed the evolution of your last few statements there, but I'm gonna pick it apart very quickly. Okay, you know, the way that you ended the conversation, and in the middle of your conversation you talked about why you're not doing what you should be doing and what you see yourself doing in the future, right? But in the very beginning of your statement, you were saying that I'm trying to do X, Y, and Z. Am I trying to get to this
Mm-hmm.
particular level? And I have a really big problem with the word try.
Yep.
I'm big on word association, and so there's no try. We're either doing it or we're not.
Yep. I'm
You
gonna.
know?
I need to slide this up because people who are looking at the camera now they can see. I got the sign here with Yoda, right? That I
Okay,
think we talked about this on the podcast. He says, "Do or do not. There is no try."
that's it.
Right. So I'm right there with you, and I got that right around the same time because I'm realizing I'm just like, yo, you believe in that, but you're not doing it.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if people have ever been to that point where it's just like you really believe in a mantra, you believe in certain things, but when you look around, you are not embodying the messages that you are sitting there and just prescribing to, right? It's almost just like you're just getting that mental stimulus and just like, oh yeah, that sounds really good.
Yeah,
Everything, all
it
like I
sounds
said,
cool.
all the motivational stuff, yeah, yeah, like 75 hard, yeah, but
Yeah,
are you doing anything, right? Like, are you really doing it?
yeah, yeah, for sure. And and when I go back to the word comfortable, just being real, like I was forced out of my comfortability, right?
Mm.
Like you become blind at the age of 16 and you're not expecting it. It ain't comfortable like that
you
anymore.
could say that, yep.
And it's funny, like, why is he laughing about that? Well, and
Yeah.
because I've grown as an
Yep.
individual, you know what I mean? But that obstacle really showed me a couple things. One, I can move through being uncomfortable. And this was only the start of the uncomfort and learning Braille and how to travel as a blind person and all that. But then the other piece to this, which is almost a complete flip side, is that you really learn to not take things for granted.
Mm.
Um, it's interesting because the things, the way we think about life, et cetera, can be taken away from us so quickly. So quickly. And so I start thinking about, at least in that time of my life, I was really thinking about, am I actually appreciating all the things that I have? Because once I lost something that I relied upon, like my vision, it really made me think like, I lost that, but gosh, I have all these other things. I'm blessed. And so it just really makes you think about the uncomfortable, the comfortable, but yet also how to grow as an individual and push yourself through all these different situations.
Mm. Yeah, that whole practice of just gratitude and just being aware of those things is, I mean, I said, like you said, words are important. It is a practice, and it is very easy to go through your day to day and just miss these things, and just like we said, just like, oh man, there's so much traffic on my way to work, blah 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 blah. I can't believe this is happening, and it's like, yo, take 2 seconds, look around your car, think about the fact that you're sitting in a nice heated vehicle, right? If it's cold outside, right?
Right, right.
You probably have Bluetooth speakers with a nice sunroof. You probably got something that's less than 10 years old with no mechanical issues. And then the person who's also stuck in traffic next to you is sitting there in the hoopty, barely making it to work, and they're chilling, bumping out to some music, right? Stuck in the same traffic, gonna be late the same way. But the perspective is just different,
Mm,
right? And those are the simple things. And I think I use that example because I feel like that's one that most of us can probably relate to, because those are the subtle, like, just shifts right in your day where it's like, yo, you can just find moments almost every hour to be grateful about something that we are just taking for granted. Like you said, whether it be something that we have, physically, that we have the ability to do, that we just take advantage, that we just take for granted on a daily basis, or the people we have around us, right, who are very loving and caring, or who always, make us laugh, or who are there when we're sad. The people who are at work and who help you out anytime you're in a crunch, and we miss those things, right? Like, we miss those moments to just appreciate those people, to appreciate those things we have, until that person quits, right? Until that person is no longer your friend and now they're gone somewhere else, right? And now you don't have that person to fill that void, or until you don't have a car anymore and now you're sitting there catching two buses, three buses to work, and now you're really upset, right? Because now your entire daily routine has changed. Now you got your commute went from 40 minutes to now 2 hours, 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the things, right, where I realize it is a daily practice. And the more you do it, and the more you can sit there and be aware of it and call these things out and say, oh, well, this may not be going well, but I still have this, like, I got that. And I can always, there's opportunity to continue to improve those things.
And so, completely agree. And so, when we talk about being
Mm-hmm.
thankful and the gratitude piece, still often that's incomplete. And we don't do incomplete here. So, I'm cool with the gratitude, but in
Mm-hmm.
my opinion, it ends with the recognition piece.
Mm-hmm.
Recognizing what it is you have, like being thankful, but then recognition, like that, recognizing what you got, where you're going, recognize it all, recognize your strengths, recognize your weaknesses, and recognize that there are opportunities.
Yeah, well, I mean, and you'll like this, right? Because that, I think, is what loops back around and completes the full vision, right? Like, when you can sit there and, it's like, man, I'm grateful for these things, but, and I'm thankful for what they are, and I want to recognize them. But like you said, also, where, if you can stretch your vision a little bit further, right, and say, like, well, let me, do I recognize where this could go if I
Mm,
really do nurture this, if I
come
really
on now.
do appreciate this, right? And I put in the work for this every single day. And like I said, it doesn't have to do and with anything physical. That can be your personal relationships, right? That can be your anything that that you can improve, right? That you can just move the ball forward slowly but surely. If you can recognize it and say, like, wow, this is something that is going well, or that I have the opportunity to grow. You were talking about opportunities before. This is
Mm-hmm.
something that I have the opportunity to grow. I recognize that. So where can I take this, right? What does the vision look like for that? That's where I think people can really just start going crazy.
And so we're talking about the vision to grow and move forward in your business and in the podcast. What's next for the podcast right now? What's the vision? What's the recognition of the podcast these
Yep.
days? First sip.
Yep. So, well, like we were talking about before, First Sip is now taking a different direction, right? Where I will be the only host going forward. Me and Albert had a discussion, right? Where, and before anybody says anything, we're cool, right? That's still my boy. We texting right now. I know he's probably waiting for me to hop on, play some Apex. So, play some video games later. But
Right.
with you realize, right? Like, with it, it's just, life's just kind of taken us both in, like, different directions, right? Where it's like, he's
Mm-hmm.
got this going on, I've got these things going on, so the priorities just aren't aligning,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's just like, okay, we just have to just continue to just operate, right? And thankfully, we've done things over the past year to make sure that the podcast is pretty systematized, right? So we don't have to do a lot of creation work, for the back end stuff. It's just like,
Mm-hmm.
the most creating is done, like, right here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sitting down, doing the interviews. But the little back end stuff, it does take up time, and we're like, all right, that is something that we both don't have the ability to do right now. So going forward, right, with the podcast, I will be the only host going forward.
Mm-hmm.
But you guys will still see Albert and some of the other contributors, right, that we've had before, Ayana, you yourself, of course, back on for regular episodes, right? Because that's the whole vision. That's the, like, saying, going back to our vision, that's the whole idea for the podcast, is to build that community of people who are all trying to improve not only their
Yeah.
health but their wealth, right?
Mm.
With one sip at a time. So, as we continue to do that, we're continuing to grow and continue to build. And this is one building point. This is what me and Albert actually said when we were talking about this, was like, we've learned so much over the podcast that this is a part of that, right? Which is like, yo, we learned, okay, what is it truly that we want to do? and how do we need to get, and how do we get there, right? And this like turning point, I guess you're going to call it, right? Or the whatever you want to call it, right? The Y in the road where we both have to take different paths
Yeah.
is just that. All right. So yeah.
But is that a little bit
Hmm.
difficult though?
Of
When you,
course.
yeah.
I think anybody who says it isn't is maybe trying to just like, make themselves feel good. Of course, like it's difficult, but in the aspect of maybe not in like the work side, but more so in just like, oh man, like it was, cool, like podcasting, like with your best friend, like every week, right? But that's just me, being me. That's my
Hmm.
personality where I love engaging with people. I love engaging with my friends, my family. Like my, a few years ago, we opened up a business account, right, for the guys, because I'm like, yo, we got to start coming together and do some different investments and build these things, right? Because I truly want to build and grow with my team, right? Like with the same people who we used to play sports with, right, back in high school. It's like the
Yeah.
same team nowadays. And of course, that also includes my family, right? Like that's the same way I look at it. So it's, of course, it's a sad day when you're no longer able to continue to do that, but we have things, that are structured where it's like we can still build. You may not be sitting on the podcast with me, right? But we can still build up First Sip the business in
Mm.
in other lanes, right? Like, so
Hmm.
if y'all see a First Sip smoothie, coming in your latest,
Oh gosh.
right? If y'all see some First Sip vending machines, just
Right.
know, right, that just to support the brand, because it's
Yeah.
it's an umbrella at the end of the day, and
Yeah.
this is just one piece, and that is one thing we're definitely realizing, right? But it's and going back, right, like I said, on the personal side, right, like of, oh, I might just feel sad. That's another growing point, right? Like that's an
Mm.
opportunity for me to realize, like, yo, this is business. You are not
Hmm.
always going to, it's nothing personal, right? Like he didn't come here and say, yo, Kim, I don't like you. The way you be doing what you do. Right? Like that would, like, think about how crazy, like that would be a different
Yeah.
conversation, right? Like that would be okay, maybe we can't talk about, how this went down, but it was just like, yo, everything was clicking, is cool, right? But it's just like, yo, you have to realize this is how business operates. You're not always like, you might have people who build with you and grow with you, and then you get to a point where it's like, oh, we got to do something else.
Yeah. I mean, my immediate response when
Hmm.
you were telling me about this, I was like, "Oh, are you all good?" And you're like,
Yeah,
"Yeah,
you were like, bro, I reread it and I thought I texted you like somebody died. Like I was like,
That's
I was like,
true. That's
I
I was like,
was
"Oh,
like,
we good?
yo,
We cool?"
I picked back up the phone. I was like, what did I say?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
is everything okay? I was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah. I'm like, yeah, man. But
That's what's
that's
up.
the thing too. But I realize also, as far as what we've been able to build in that short time, it almost gives people that impression. It's just like, yo, like y'all really had like such a good thing going there, right? Like
Yeah.
what happens? But it's just, that's the kind of connection that we want to build, right? And the connection that I want to continue to build, and that we will continue to build. So yeah.
And so when I gotta say, I loved being on your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. It was an awesome time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you all do some really unique things. And one of the neat moments I think of the podcast that you all do in every episode that
Mm-hmm.
I thought was, and when I listen to you all, I ask my Alexa device to play it. You know what I mean? It's really neat.
Yeah.
I One of the neat things that you all do is the content recs.
Yep.
What was the inspiration for that? And do you have a content rec for today for us?
Ooh, I like it. I like it, bro. The inspiration was as simple as the how we came up with the title and the "What You Sipping On" segment,
Mm,
right? So the content rec just goes back to me and Albert love movies, right?
mm,
And great TV shows that are shot like movies. So we're huge Marvel fans, right? Like every Marvel movie I think we've seen since like Iron Man, right? Like the group, like we all go, we see the movies, and it's just a great time. Even, but now it's like, okay, with all these streaming channels, there's always a new movie coming out. So in the group chat, we're always sharing like, yo, did you guys see this movie? Yo, did you see
mm,
this show? Did you? Now a lot of us are in personal development, so it's okay. Yo, have you read this book? oh, did you tap into this audiobook or this YouTube series? You
Oh,
should
did you
watch
guys check
this.
out the Speaker Vision podcast this week?
It's always plug, right? So those are the different things, because there's so much content going around right now that we want to kind of make sure that our community is tapping into some great content, right? We want to make sure that not only are you getting good educational stuff, right? Yes, we want to tap into your books, audiobooks, right? We have the book club. You can, check out the YouTube series that we share and a lot of those different things. But also we just enjoy some, pretty, sometimes some trash TV, right? Or some pretty mindless movies. So we
Mm-hmm.
share those too, right?
Yeah,
And this
yeah.
week, I got a perfect rec for people who are looking for some good action thrillers. Citadel on Amazon Prime, right?
Okay.
I am loving that show now. Now the episodes drop once a week, so they keep you a little, on edge with the suspense. But Citadel is featuring Priyanka Chopra, and I forget the guy's name, but they are basically two spies who are part of this organization known as Citadel. And something happens where they end up both losing their memory, and Citadel gets shut down. Right, all the spies, everybody gets kidnapped or killed. So a whole bunch of stuff happens. Then a couple years later, things come back, and now, right, they have to be brought back into this world. They find a way to give them back their memory, but we are still seeing the story develop, right? Because I'm only on episode 3 or 4 now. So very interesting show. It is incredible production work. I don't know how
Uh-huh.
much money Amazon put into this, but I think they hundreds of millions, hundreds of
Wow.
millions. So y'all
I'll
got
have to
y'all got to
Google
check it
it.
out. Yeah, it's definitely a recommendation though.
That's what's
How about
up.
you? You got anything for us?
It's interesting because I was just talking about this on one of my shorts content, on my reels content, and
Mm-hmm.
I I think it's important. Actually, I'm getting confused. It was in one of my last podcast episodes where I talk about the 3 words to achieve anything and the 1 word you need to take with you on the journey.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so what I will say is that I am just I work a lot, right? I work a lot. I'm connecting with clients all the time and everything like that. So I'm really big on one, trying to find those different things that I can, one, learn from, but two,
Mm-hmm.
have a moment and relax. So my
Mm.
content rec, and this episode will come out towards the end of May. And so what I will tell you all is don't miss the NBA playoffs.
Oh man. Oh man.
That's probably what I'm gonna do after this. But the reason why I bring it up, with the NBA playoffs and basketball in general, is one, as you know, basketball is my favorite sport. I love to watch football a lot, but I do enjoy watching basketball. And the reason why I bring it up is one, something I enjoy watching and listening to. But the other piece of this is that I've learned so much from sports in my life. Like, I really feel like a lot of my communication skills and being able to work with others comes from the fact that, one, I watch a lot of sports and played basketball.
Mm.
And I think that anyone who's struggling with any type of turmoil in their job or on the daily or working with others, just watch a sport. Watch a sport and look at others kind of connect and communicate on a daily basis when they're working towards your ultimate goal.
Mm. Yeah, there's a lot of fundamental lessons that people can learn from sports.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually having this conversation with my dad the other day about just, I wish there was a way to have like all kids play sports, because
Yeah,
you can really tell a difference between the adults that used to play sports and the ones that didn't. When, like you said, when things get tough, when you have to now communicate in tough times, times of conflict, times of success, right? How to keep the
right,
success going. Can you
right.
keep it going and not get big headed? There's so much that goes into it that you could take away from sports.
And so if it's not sports or the debate team and the marching band, both
Yeah,
things I've also done.
yeah.
So
Marching band
like,
was crazy, man. I still can't believe that. That was wow,
come on,
wow.
hype us up, hype us up. Let's go.
State champs 4 times.
You know what I'm saying? I loved it. All the lessons, just
Yeah.
finding different ways to work with others. So the content rec is NBA playoffs, but the theme of it all is being able to communicate and work with others.
Mm.
Now, but before we go, I'm going to go into the one word thing again, and we're going to wrap it and bring it all back around to 75 hard and the podcast moving forward. What's one word, and then give us the paragraph afterwards, all right?
Yep. Yep.
That speaks to the lessons that you learned in 75 hard and the podcast moving forward.
Pivot.
Ooh, pivot. Okay. All right. Let's dive into it. Why pivot?
That's it. I mean, it's funny because you're talking about basketball, right? You're talking about 75 hard and all these things, and you want to bring it full circle, right? So I'll do that for you. But you play basketball, right? So you could definitely explain this a lot better than me. But I mean, let's just break it down simply. Like when you're going to the basket, right, and you're about to trying to make a shot, and you have to stop and make a quick pivot. Do you completely change where your end destination is or where you're trying to go?
Wow.
Right? I'm asking you, right? You still trying to get to the basket, right?
We still get to the rack. Still get to the rim.
So at the end of the day, right, we still have these same goals, right? For whether it be for my physical health, right? So with 75 hard going through it, this pops up, bro. You have the same thing that you still have the same goal. Pivot, right? Just make a little change here, adjust, and then still continue on the path that you were on before, right? Forget about that you were on before.
Adjust,
and now with
adapt,
the podcast, yeah.
Adjust, adapt, and overcome.
Mm-hmm. Yep. With the podcast, same thing. You had 2 hosts, right, that were contributing to the interviews. Now you have 1 host. Everything else is still the same, right? So just pivot the conversation flow slightly. Pivot the way you're acquiring guests, right? Just make an adjustment and keep moving because your end goal, right, is to still get to the hoop. Like that doesn't change. You see the hoop, you know where you're trying to get to, so just make the adjustment and keep going.
Balling. Whenever someone brings up the word pivot, I can't help but to think of, maybe we'll cue the clip at some point in the middle of this. The Friends clip where they're moving the couch.
Okay.
The end goal was still to get it into the apartment, but it was like, pivot!
Here we go, pivot! 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 Pivot!
Pivot! That's hilarious, but that's awesome. If I can tie a bow on this, I think it's important to just make sure you mention the reason, the fact that the end goal is still the same, but recognize and have gratitude for the obstacles and the journey. But once again, recognize the fact that when it comes to pivoting, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it, and it's going to happen. It's going to happen, no matter what we got going on, and in different forms of fashion, whatever. Pivoting will be a part of the journey, but keep putting the shots up.
That is so true, right? It goes back to that saying: just become comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? That's where you're really starting to find that sweet spot.
That's it. And if you're too comfortable, it's time to pivot. And with that, Dekimbe, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. Any last words?
I mean, thank you for having me back, man. We're definitely going to continue to do this, right?
Yes.
Like I said, as a part of the vision for First Sip. I see you coming on more often, being a regular contributor, building really out that whole motivation, self-empowerment side of things. So, I think you'll like what I have in mind for the future. And like you said, we'll talk after this. I don't want to give away. That's another thing I'm realizing. I've been giving away too many ideas on these podcasts, right? I'm gonna see it pop up on somebody else's platform.
Right.
So,
Too many
yeah.
freebies.
Too many freebies. Join the Patreon.
Hey. We are visionofhope.com for coaching. Not only I am Vision of Hope, but we are Vision of Hope. Take care, everyone. When adversity came, I could have fell apart, but I chose instead to follow my heart. When adversity comes, I will never run. I will adjust, adapt, and overcome. Vision.